Hello and welcome back. Today is Saturday, one day after posting the last Lincoln video, or the first Lincoln video, part one. Friendly announcement, other Lou, he's alive, he's doing well, he's healthy. He runs a full-blown auto repair shop that my grandfather started in the 50s. He took over in the 80s, accidentally burned it down once in 89. Then we together burned it down on accident again in 2015. So he's pretty busy with the day-to-day there, hence why, this car is here in my garage, even though it is one of his customers. And he'll probably be around at some point in this video. This is hopefully the last video mechanical related, but wanted just to show you really quick before I start taking the valve covers off, the difference in the paint. I do think that's a lighter color than what would have came from Lincoln on these in 1975. I know there's a number of Ford Blues. We actually did, if you could see it in here, we did the water pump on this car years ago. So it's a slightly different color there. But once it's all painted uniform, it'll look really good. It looks really good already. I'm pleasantly surprised with how well it did turn out. You could see like where the masking helped, and that line back there had overspray on it from the factory, so I might try and dull that down a little bit. But I'm gonna pop the valve covers today, and then we are just really sanding all day today. Have to do the air cleaner base, got to take all these attachments off. My preferred method for tools are always a wire wheel on parts like this. This will be the heavy guy for the bigger areas. Got my trusty drill. And I'm also going to use the drill press today. This is probably my favorite tool that I own. I've had it for about a year. I absolutely love it. It is an old Sears Craftsman. I don't remember if this one was made in the USA or not. I think it is. It says it somewhere. I don't know. Let's just assume it is, because that would be disappointing if it wasn't. But we'll probably do this, especially for like that bracket, that throttle bracket, as well as some of the finicky spots in the valve covers. I might go buy a different cup attachment for it. Takes any typical drill attachment, but this is all adjustable and everything. So it'll be a lot of time-lapse day, heavy, not mentally strenuous work, just kind of going with the flow, and then progress you will see pretty frequently. It's always satisfying to watch. So we'll probably start with there, and then if we get everything done, it is rainy out today, so there's some moisture in the air, but I'm going to try and get these parts primed, and you will see that all here on part two of the Lincoln Revival. Before I start sanding everything, or wire wheeling, I guess, here is the valve covers off and what everything looks like. Super clean. Some buildup there. Not quite sure what's going on, but not really worried about it at the same time. So all the rocker arms are nice and solid. Doesn't feel like there's any lash or play. Well, any negative lash, I should say. So I'm just gonna use the handy dandy aluminum foil that I never returned, so didn't follow my own advice, but we will get these covered up, and then I will start mindlessly wire wheeling parts.
That's why you wear gloves.
Quick update of everything you just saw from the drill press attachment and the angle grinder attachment. We're coming out pretty good here. A lot of clean metal, but also a lot of pitty metal. So I haven't really hit anything in here, but it's really rough to the touch. A lot of dust. I'm assuming that is from where it got hottest, because this was also right here was where that canister was attached, and this is by far the most bubbled the paint has been, and certainly the blackest from all the smoke and soot. So it's coming out good. I wish I had a sandblast cabinet. I don't really even have room for one currently, but it's a much quicker process. However, I am happy with the results. Okay, last update before I leave you guys so I could just finish this. Coming along really good. Biggest issues I've had is getting in these small areas. This is all rust, surface rust and on here. So before I prime this, I'm going to spray it with this rust treatment, this rust converter. We've had really good luck with it. Essentially, it sprays on clear, turns purple, destroys rust on contact. Not a sponsor, Permatex, but really enjoy this stuff. Typically, you spray it in a nice even coat. It is sandable if you wanted to sand it out, but we usually just leave it, and then after about 24 hours of cure time, we will then just spray the primer over it. So these parts are not going to need any of it. These are completely rust-free. They're almost done. I bought 2 special cups, or 2 new drill attachments to get just in some of these crevices, and then a nice new wire wheel for the outside here. I'm going to flip this upside down and just clean this up perfect, but wanted the drill to recharge. And then we'll also need a rust convert. This valve cover, this is the driver's side, so all this rust in here, so this will get the same treatment. And then again, as I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, this is the factory sticker with like the timing specifications, the RPMs, the spark plug gaps. We didn't get a reproduction for this, so I want to save this as best as I could. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I taped it off with a lower adhesive, so hopefully it doesn't ruin it when I go to peel it up. We'll strip this whole thing. I'll peel the tape back, go really slow with the wire brush on the remaining blue paint, and then we'll come back, mask it, and I won't take it off again until we get it painted. It's supposed to leave a pretty fine line, what's it called, the paint edge thickness, and my hand was a little bit worse than we thought. So coming along good. I got quite a few hours. It's 11 o'clock when I started. It's about 3 o'clock now, so have a little more time to prep these, and then we'll get them ready for paint. Next day, everything came out really good thus far. Have some cleanup to do in spots, but overall really happy. Got to sand this down a little bit. There's some pitting here lightly, as well as up in this area. So I think I'm going to hit these each with a coat of filler primer, and then here's the rust converter I was talking about. You can see how it almost fills the pits. I did go all around this lightly, but we will sand or hit this with self-etching. This is going to get just sandable primer because it's got a lot of sharp creases and lines, and this was in really good shape. If you go back and look, there was like not 1 ounce of pit anywhere. So sandable, filler, self-etch. I'm going to do the bracket, but while I let this build coats, I'm going to sand these, I think with 400. We'll have to see, but there will be some spots where bare metal reprises, but that's why you keep using primer. So goal would be to get these in final prime by the end of the day today, sand, and then paint tomorrow, because then it gets really cold, like sub 30s. So I'm in my little workshop area. It is insulated, but I'm going to probably throw a space heater in here for the majority of the day to help get some heat built up. So Back on the Lincoln, it's been a while. Just getting to some reassembly now. One quick cleaning tip. With stuff like this was all rust, if you remember. Gets a little bit cleaner as you get to the original line, but when the chemical from the fire extinguisher, it just oxidized pretty much everything under here. For example, these vacuum trees and stuff, this one over here as well. So what I just do is take Quad Zero steel wool. You can use it on anything from metal to plastics. Like I'll probably do the air cleaner box, and it's even safe on paint and stuff. And you just really, depending on what you're working on, just clean around like this. Come down, I usually soak it with like a mix of Simple Green and water, and it cleans things up basically like brand new. So I'm gonna work to finish just cleaning up under here and put the valve covers back on, put thermostat housing back in. So far, just really happy with how everything's coming out. So want to potentially get this car out of here by the end of this week. It's Monday, the week of Thanksgiving. Going to put the valve covers back on, and there's all this sludge buildup. So I think I'm going to take a pick and run the vacuum right on it, and then just try and pick out as much as I could. Not 100% sure why. Everything else is really clean. I got to get rid of some of these blue paint chips and stuff that fell in, but same thing on that side. So not exactly sure what happened, but we're gonna get the valve covers back on and start reassembling the top end. It's like 19 degrees out. It's my own fault. Should have worked on it last week when I had the opportunity, but I was not feeling so well. So here we are. All right, going to match up each gasket. These are the rubber style. I really prefer the cork. Rubbers are prone to leaking because they don't seal uniformly all the way around. So I'm just going to put like 4 dabs of silicone just to hold it in place on both sides, and then we'll put them in as careful as possible, but hopefully these don't leak. I could see myself taking these off again and replacing with cork. I feel like every video I make, it's always something related to alternators. So these are the identical bodies. They have the correct points for the wiring and the ground and the power, but these two pulleys are vastly different. This is for like a serpentine setup, if you could see. And this is for the traditional older style belt. So also different height. If I had a straight edge, I would show you. I have a lower control on it. I guess that works, right? You could see they're pretty level, but the pulley for here is much lower than that. So I'm gonna have to swap these out. I'm gonna clean and paint this because I have OCD, and we'll put it back on. All right, first major problem on reassembly. The owner got a new carburetor, which this is a 600 CFM vacuum secondary electric choke, which is another problem. Replacement Holley carburetor, seems like a pretty basic carb. And if you're not familiar, Holleys are square bore intakes. So they take a square bore intake, meaning primaries and secondaries are equal distance, where the factory Motorcraft and a lot of the Rochester Quadrajets, actually all of the Rochester Quadrajets, are spread bore, meaning they have larger diameter secondaries and smaller diameter primaries. So this is the base plate that goes on the intake. I'm not sure what it's running vacuum for, but it's doing vacuum for something somewhere. It actually comes in through here. I got to clean this out a little bit better. But you have to put this plate on first, and then this faces the rear of the intake. There's a carburetor gasket in between that has the, go like this, I guess, that has the appropriate plate that runs for the vacuum pickup. But I don't have the owner didn't supply this gasket, so I just had to buy one off the line. Actually got an NOS one for 11 bucks shipped, so it's not a bad deal. But in order to use this, he was using this plate here, this, we'll say, raised intake or carburetor gasket. And you could see the factory, or not the factory, but you could see where it kind of impressioned itself over the years. So it was like this. Something fit in like that. You can see this witness mark here. So it's slid up. Because without it, if you're just putting this on, and I'm not going to be able to get it on here, but if you're just putting this on without it, you're not going to be able to open the primaries all the way. It's going to get hit up here, and then as a result, you never open the secondaries at all. But we're going to reuse this, which certainly not ideal, but it's the only really option we have. Okay, moving on from the carburetor laps, we are going to reinstall the alternator. Just painted this pulley using the original fan that came on the new alternator as opposed to this one. They're almost identical, so I'll just slam the other one back with the old parts so the owner has it, but we should be good to go here. Going to swap it back in and move on to the next project. Back on the Lincoln, we are a few days later. As I was mentioning the other day, had to wait and get a gasket for the intake to this base plate to then the carburetor. So this sits on here like this. I cleaned out this center vacuum, and this one here, you can see it actually runs up here, or vice versa, I think it runs up, out the vacuum port, pulls vacuum from there, and then some residual comes in here. And then with this plate covering it, it has these two slots here. So if anyone can tell me what emissions equipment this does, I'd really like to know. But anyway, this will sit on the back of the intake. So this is if you're looking down into the motor, that's underneath it that way. And then we got the secondary adapter here, since the square bore intake is what it'll take. And then carburetor sits something like that. And that's what the top of the intake will be. So I'm going to put this back on. Previously, I mentioned that we're wrapping everything else up. I have this all covered now because I was doing more wire wheeling on the hood. But essentially, which I guess I'll show you in a minute, this was stupid. I forgot this was on here. Oh, we also got this cover back in too. So pretty cool. Continental Mark IV. It's got all the engine specifications here. I mean, this is the lap of luxury right here. Fuel capacity, 26.5 gallons. That is crazy. 5 quarts oil, 12-volt electrical systems. It's got its rear transmission ratios. Does it have its rear gear? No, it doesn't. So pretty cool. Talk to you soon. Looks like an engine again. We're getting there. Still have to hook everything up. The linkage is disconnected. Got to figure out how the old one was set up, as well as the kickdown was never put back together. So we got to figure that one out, see if we can rig something up here to have the transmission kickdown engage. Other than that, still have to do the fuel line. Made that video about cleaning this fuel line down in here, but it turns out the owner got a new one. I should have looked at all the parts beforehand, but we'll swap that on, then figure out an appropriate way to route it. I want to come this way, preferably with a hard line. Not sure how that's all going to work out yet. Still have to do the electric choke. There's some odds and ends in the wiring that I have to, I got to get it back to the factory location, as well as some connectors are disconnected still. But otherwise, I mean, it's pretty close to getting fired off. I'm trying to think just out loud here. I don't believe there's much more to do. We have the hood all wire wheeled in the same rust converter that we used previously. I still have to do under here. Now this part's covered up as opposed to the engine, but happy with how everything's coming out. I expect to be running this engine very soon, and hopefully you'll see that. Well, for you, you'll see it in like the next couple of clips, but for me, it's going to be a couple days. So other Lou will probably be up here for that. I asked him to come up. He said he's available. It's his birthday today. He's old. Comment below if you can guess his age. If you do, we'll give you something for free. I don't know what. We'll figure it out. Bye-bye. Oh, before I forget, the other big puzzle piece that we have to figure out is all of the vacuum ports, what runs where. So I've been looking online for diagrams. I found some stuff that covers, the basics, but not everything from, this tree to the tree down here to this one back here. And then this we got to block off. I think you saw me remove that in the first video. If you look at the carburetor, the original one taken off, the choke setup looks like it was vacuum controlled. This was a port. And then the other piece, which is in this bag, pulled vacuum from the intake and I guess subsequently heat. I don't really know how this goes. I've never seen a piece like this. So I'm just going to clean this up, cap this off, I believe, and then hopefully I mean, I don't know. I gotta figure it out. So, does this video feel like it's dragging out for you guys as well? I feel like I have been thought processing the same few problems for days now, but I think we have some solutions in progress. So let's start with the fuel line. If you can remember, that's the reason that the car burned. So the factory fuel line that was on here was cut back to about here. It did a big loop up into here because it had an inline filter. I think I have a solution for that. I bent this back a little bit. You can see where it's just the slightest amount of kinked from taking a box end wrench and prying it upwards. That will have absolutely no risk of fuel flow dilution, as well as it's not pinched or anything. So everything will be fine there. I'm just going to run a small line, a small rubber hose right here, from here to here. I think that's the safest way, and then we'll replace the fuel line that goes from the hard line going back to the tank to the fuel pump, and we'll put an inline filter down there. It'll be easily serviceable if needed, as well as it's much cleaner of an installation up here. And most importantly, when we tie these wires back, there is no risk of it arcing against for any reason. So problem one solved. Problem two is the vacuum setup. So some differences with the carburetors, and I'll show you here. I even tried, my initial thought was taking, so this is the old carburetor. I took this eyelet that's on a swivel out and was going to potentially, so this is another double pumper I had on the shelf, cut the double pumper line and have it go like that, but this doesn't thread in, and I just feel like there's nowhere for it to like bottom out inside here. You see how this is beveled, so I didn't think that was a good solution, especially long term. But there's vacuum ports here, etc. And on the new carburetor, it's also 50 degrees out in December. That's fantastic. There isn't the same vacuum setup, so I have old reference pictures, of course, but I'm not going to be able to use them for what I initially intended, so I'm going to have to figure it out. There's a ton of vacuum ports on this car that we have to figure out, which again leads me to my next point. I was messing with you guys. I knew what this was all along. I knew it was the EGR valve. You could stop yelling at me in the comments. You could take your comment back and write something nice. I was just messing with you guys. No, I came across that looking for a wiring diagram. Should have knew it was the EGR valve. Doesn't matter. Moving on. In closing, I did paint the hood here, sanded all of the scale and surface rust away, so that came out pretty nice. Still have to do under here, but focusing on getting this thing running. So vacuum ports, some connections for the wiring harness to be hooked up, and then it should fire off fairly drama-free. I don't know. We'll find out. You'll see it soon. About to hook power back up to the car for the first time. Have all of the vacuum diagrammed correctly, I think. I hope. I really don't know. We'll have to see. There is one port that is currently undone out there. Also, in my research for the vacuum, I realized that the cars came with electric chokes from the factory, so hopefully I'll just be able to hook that right in there. But key is on. Let's hook up power and make sure we don't hear anything getting crispy. I don't smell anything. I'm going to try cranking it and just see what happens. I'm only going to crank it once or twice. Auto leveling's working. That scared me. Cranking. Okay. Well, I just heard before I cranked my fiance come up the driveway with dinner, so I will be back. Okay. Crank good. Just 8. Not sure if it has spark. Not sure this electric choke might work too, but we're not going to do anything with that. Now, the throttle cable's still disconnected. Like, there's still a lot going on that needs to be corrected, but let's see if we get it to choke off a little bit. And the nice thing about working with Fords, you could just hotwire it right here if you have the ignition on. So the ignition's on, car's in park. Gonna dump a little bit down here. That broke. Let's just see if it barks a little bit. So go positive to cranking. This is why we're replacing the starter. Went for a second. We're gonna choke it. Good luck, little buddy. One more time for good measure. Now it won't crank. Huh. Forgot I unplugged the starter wire. A lot of black smoke. Running very rich, it sounds like. Well, it runs-ish. It's rich. It really whines. Could be 1,000 other things wrong, but on the flip side, it started. It ran. Certainly rough idle, but we'll fix that. There's no leaks anywhere. That's a piece of sandpaper. And there's no fires. So I would call that a win. This is part 2 of the video, but I'm going to end it here. Not sure if there'll be a part 3. Obviously have a lot of work left to do, but we have other projects we want to show on the channel. So have to detail it and stuff. Have to do the wheels, polish them. So you might see a part 3, you might not. But this concludes the goal, which was to get it running again, and we'll see if we get it running better in the next video. Maybe you'll see it, maybe you won't.